Have you ever noticed how desperately we try to control everything? The future, our image, our emotions, our relationships, as if life were a performance that would collapse the moment we forget our lines. Every morning, you wake up and rebuild the fragile structure of certainty. You check your messages, your plans, your reflection, searching for proof that you are still on track. But there is no track, only movement, only a world that keeps changing, no matter how tightly you cling to it. You want life to be predictable because you believe that predictability means safety. But what if it's the opposite? What if safety exists only when you stop demanding guarantees? Michel de Montaigne, a philosopher who lived in 16th century France, knew this truth long before modern psychology found the words for it. He realized that our greatest suffering doesn't come from what happens, but from our refusal to let it happen. He saw people around him building elaborate cages of belief and ideology, each one convinced they had captured truth. But Montaigne withdrew. He turned inward, into the only territory that could not be conquered by theory, his own mind. There, in the solitude of his library tower, he began a revolution. Not a revolution of swords or politics, but of humility. He dared to write about not knowing. He dared to say that certainty was an illusion. And in doing so, he discovered a kind of peace that the world outside could not disturb. Because what if life was never meant to be mastered? What if the secret is not control, but trust? Not knowing where you're going, but learning how to walk anyway. Montaigne reminds us that wisdom begins the moment we whisper to ourselves, "I don't know," and that's okay. When you surrender the illusion of control, you don't lose your power, you recover it. You stop fighting the current, and for the first time, you start to float. We are creatures addicted to control. From the moment we wake, we build invisible fences around our day plans, schedules, routines, and we cling to them as if they could save us from the unpredictable nature of life itself. We check our phones before we even breathe fully. We map our tasks, our goals, our future, and in those small rituals there is a silent hope that if we organize everything, chaos will somehow respect our effort. But chaos doesn't negotiate. It never has. Life does not follow the rules we try to impose on it. It is a river that bends when it wishes, a wind that changes direction without asking permission, and yet we keep trying to shape it into something predictable. We spend years constructing the illusion that we are in charge, that the universe owes us stability because we worked hard, because we planned well, because we were good. But control is not security, it's tension. It's a fragile glass wall that cracks under the first sign of real change. You've felt it, haven't you? That moment when the plan shatters, the job you thought was safe disappears, the person you counted on walks away, the future you imagined dissolves into uncertainty, and suddenly everything feels like it's falling apart. But Montaigne would say, it was never whole to begin with. It only seemed stable because you believed in your own map. And maps are not the terrain. He saw this in his own time. A world obsessed with order, hierarchy, theology, a world that feared doubt more than death. But he noticed something subtle, that this craving for control was not strength. It was fear wearing the mask of reason. So he withdrew from public life, built a quiet tower on his family estate, and surrounded himself with books. He began a different kind of exploration, not of the world but of the self. And there, in silence, he discovered the truth that still terrifies us. Control is not peace, it is resistance. And resistance is suffering disguised as logic. Because when you insist that life obey you, you declare war on everything that doesn't fit your design. You fight the rain because you planned for sun. You fight the ending because you wanted more time. You fight your own emotions because they refuse to stay calm. And what happens to a person who is always at war with what is? They become tired, anxious, closed. Montaigne noticed that the people who most desperately tried to control life were also the most unhappy. They lived in constant fear of loss, of failure, of being caught off guard. They couldn't rest, because rest meant letting go. But letting go, he realized, is not weakness, it is wisdom. Because the moment you stop fighting the uncontrollable, you create space for life to move again. And in that movement, there is peace. This doesn't mean you give up or stop caring. It means you stop pretending that control equals safety. You act, yes. You plan, yes. But you also accept that the outcome is not yours to command. That balance between effort and surrender is where freedom begins. It's what Montaigne called living according to nature. Not nature as in trees and rivers, but the nature of things, the fact that all is impermanent and nothing can be fully owned, not even yourself. To live this way is to become light, You stop forcing life into a straight line. You let it curve. You let it surprise you. You begin to see that control was never peace. It was only a substitute for trust. And once you start trusting, something inside you loosens. The constant inner tension fades, the body unclenches, the mind quiets, and for the first time in a long time, you breathe, not because you plan to, but because breathing simply happens. Montaigne believed that true intelligence is not in mastering reality, but in befriending it. You can't control the river. You can only learn how to swim. And so the illusion of control fades, and what remains is something far more beautiful, a humble willingness to participate in the unfolding of life without needing to own it. Because peace was never waiting at the end of your plans, it was always waiting at the end of your resistance. Anxiety does not appear out of nowhere. It is born quietly, like a shadow that forms the moment you turn away from the light of uncertainty. We often believe that anxiety comes from the outside, from problems, deadlines, or people. But Montaigne saw something deeper. He understood that anxiety is not caused by the world. It is caused by our refusal to let the world be what it is. It begins when you start believing that every unknown must be tamed, that every question must have an answer, that every feeling must be explained. You wake up and immediately ask, what's next? What if it goes wrong? What if I fail? You scroll, you plan, you measure, but none of it brings peace, only more noise. That noise is the mind trying to control what cannot be controlled. It's like clenching your fist in the middle of a river, hoping the current will stop because you're afraid of where it might carry you. And the tighter you hold on, the more violent the water feels. Not because the river is cruel, but because you are resisting its flow. This is the secret Montaigne understood centuries before psychology gave it a name. Anxiety is not the fear of chaos. It is the belief that you must prevent it. You try to anticipate every turn of the road, as if preparation could protect you from fate. You obsess over what might happen tomorrow, because somewhere deep inside, you believe that peace requires prediction. But what if it doesn't? What if peace begins only when prediction ends? Montaigne wrote that human suffering comes less from what happens to us, and more from our futile struggle against what happens. The denial of life's movement, the refusal to accept that change is not a punishment. It's the natural rhythm of existence. He described this resistance as a form of self-imposed torture, because when you demand that life be perfect, you make yourself fragile. You create a version of peace that depends on conditions. I'll be calm when this ends. I'll relax when things are stable. I'll rest when everything makes sense. But those moments never come. They can't. Because life was never meant to stop changing long enough to satisfy your list of requirements. So you live suspended in tension, trapped between fear of what might happen and disappointment with what already has. Your mind becomes a stage where imaginary catastrophes perform endlessly, and the body listens. Your breath shortens, your shoulders tighten, your stomach clenches. You are constantly preparing for an invisible threat. Montaigne too knew this sensation. He was not detached or cold. He suffered deeply from anxiety, illness, and sleepless nights. But instead of running from them, he turned toward them. He allowed them to speak. He realized that anxiety is not an enemy to be conquered, but a teacher revealing where we are clinging too tightly. It tells us, here is where you're trying to control the uncontrollable. Here is where you've mistaken safety for certainty. The problem, he wrote, is not uncertainty itself. It is our fear of uncertainty. We live as though life should be obedient, forgetting that obedience is the death of spontaneity. You might notice it in small ways, when your plans fall apart and you call it a bad day, when someone doesn't reply and you interpret it as rejection, when something unexpected happens and you immediately label it as wrong. But wrong compared to what? Compared to your imagination, your script, the version of reality you've tried to control in your mind. That version is not real. It's just a thought, and yet you suffer for it. Because you don't live in the present moment, you live in defense against what might come next. And so Montaigne's insight becomes revolutionary. Stop preparing for life, start experiencing it. When you drop the need to predict, you begin to see things as they are. You notice the air moving through the room, the rhythm of your breath, the fact that right now, nothing is actually wrong. Anxiety loses its power, not when life becomes easy, but when you stop demanding that it should be. The modern mind wants control, but the wise mind seeks balance. The balance between doing and allowing, between shaping and surrendering. To live this way is to trust the flow of life, to admit that not knowing is not danger, it's possibility. Because every moment that you try to predict, you steal from yourself the wonder of discovering. Anxiety fades the moment you stop demanding guarantees and begin to participate in the mystery instead. And that, Montaigne would say, is the beginning of real peace. Montaigne lived in a world obsessed with certainties. Kings ruled by divine right. Philosophers wrote thick books claiming to contain the entire structure of truth. The church declared that every question already had an answer. You only had to believe hard enough. But Montaigne looked around and saw something strange. Despite all this supposed clarity, people were miserable. They killed, persecuted, and condemned one another, not because they were uncertain, but because they were too certain. And that's when he began to suspect that certainty itself might be the problem. He was born into chaos. The wars of religion, the fall of empires, the crumbling of old systems. Everywhere he looked, people were building walls to defend their beliefs. But Montaigne built a window. He turned inward. He wanted to understand what it meant to be human, not to be right. He withdrew from politics and retreated to a tower on his family estate. On its walls he carved philosophical phrases in Latin and Greek, reminders that everything passes, that wisdom begins in humility. There, surrounded by his books and silence, he began the first great experiment in self-understanding. While other thinkers sought to explain the world, Montaigne decided to explore himself. He asked not, "What is truth?" but "What do I know?" That question, corsage, became his life's compass. It seems small, but in it lies the courage to doubt everything, even one's own mind. He discovered something radical. The more he examined himself, the less he knew for sure. His thoughts contradicted each other. His emotions shifted without warning. His beliefs changed as he lived. And instead of seeing that as a flaw, he saw it as the essence of being human. "Who am I?" he asked. "I am a collection of changing impressions. I am never the same twice." For him, doubt was not paralysis, it was freedom. Freedom from the exhausting need to have an opinion on everything. Freedom from pretending to be consistent when the heart is not. He wrote with startling honesty about his fears, his aging body, his boredom, his confusion. He didn't hide behind philosophy. He didn't try to sound wise. He simply told the truth, even when it was ugly, even when it made him appear weak. That honesty was his rebellion. While others built their identities on firm ground, he built his on movement. He knew that truth was not a monument, but a tide. It rises, falls, reshapes the shore, and that is its nature. The world fears that kind of thinking because it threatens authority. A person who can doubt is a person who cannot be controlled. A person who can say, "I don't know," is dangerous because they have stopped playing the game of appearances. Montaigne called this the most difficult form of courage. Not the courage to fight battles or climb mountains, but the courage to admit your ignorance and still keep walking. He wrote, "There is no desire more natural than the desire for knowledge, but it is a knowledge that begins in knowing that you do not know." To live that way is to stop performing certainty. You stop forcing your opinions to make sense. You stop trying to appear intelligent. You allow yourself to be wrong, to evolve, and in that moment something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel light again, because certainty is heavy. It demands that you carry the world on your shoulders. It tells you that you must have answers, that you must defend them, that you must never change. But doubt frees you. It reminds you that you don't need to hold the world, you only need to hold awareness. The modern mind avoids this kind of humility. We scroll, debate, argue, and posture, anything to avoid saying, "I'm not sure." But the mind that cannot doubt becomes brittle. It breaks the moment reality doesn't match its beliefs. Montaigne's mind, on the other hand, was fluid. He could adapt. He could admit when he was wrong and keep his dignity intact. He could hold two conflicting truths in the same hand and still find peace. He once said, "If my mind could gain a firm footing, I would not make essays. I would make decisions. But it is always learning and trying." That line captures everything. He didn't write answers, he wrote attempts. That's what his essays were. Attempts to see, to feel, to understand. He didn't claim to have mastered life. He was learning how to live it. And that perhaps is the most honest thing a human being can do. To doubt is to remain alive to possibility. To question is to stay awake. To admit "I don't know" is to open a door that certainty keeps closed. And through that door comes something greater than knowledge, wisdom. Because wisdom, Montaigne reminds us, is not built on what you know. It's built on the grace of knowing that you could be wrong and still be at peace with that. Most people spend their lives trying to understand everything except themselves. We study history, politics, psychology, even the stars, yet we remain strangers to the one mind through which all of it is seen. Montaigne understood this paradox. He realized that the most mysterious, unstable, and fascinating object in existence was not the universe, it was the self. While others sought to describe the nature of God or the laws of reason, Montaigne sat in his library tower and turned the lens inward. He didn't want to explain the human condition. He wanted to observe it, honestly, directly, without the filters of pride or fear. He became his own experiment. Every mood, every contradiction, every weakness became material for reflection. He wrote about his laziness, his fears, his desires, his vanity, his physical pain, even his confusion about death. And by naming these things, by facing them without shame, he disarmed them. He discovered that what we refuse to face within ourselves does not disappear, it grows. Our ignored fears return as anxiety. Our hidden anger becomes exhaustion. Our unspoken sadness hardens into cynicism. But when we dare to look inward with honesty, the monsters shrink. They lose their mystery. They become part of the human landscape, imperfect but not unbearable. Montaigne wrote, "I am human, and nothing human is alien to me." That line is not a declaration of pride, it's an act of compassion. It means there is nothing inside me, however dark or shameful, that disqualifies me from being human. Everything belongs. We spend so much time judging our emotions, labeling them as good or bad, productive or weak. But judgment blinds us. To understand yourself, you must first stop trying to improve yourself. You must learn to see, not to fix. This is what Montaigne practiced. He turned self-observation into a kind of inner dialogue, a conversation between his higher mind and his fragile humanity. He didn't always like what he saw, but he refused to look away. And that refusal was an act of love. To see yourself clearly is to end the war between who you are and who you think you should be. Because the more you fight your own nature, the more fragmented you become. Montaigne's mirror was not made to flatter, it was made to reveal. And through that mirror, he discovered peace, not perfection. Because peace does not come from becoming flawless. It comes from realizing that even your flaws belong. To know yourself truly is to accept that you are both light and shadow, and that no amount of control will ever erase your complexity. Montaigne invites us to stop pretending, to step before the mirror of the self, to see what is there without judgment, and in that naked honesty, to finally breathe again. We are taught to fear change as if it were the opposite of safety. We say we want growth, yet we resist everything that might cause it. We cling to what is known even when it quietly suffocates us, because the unknown feels like death. But to Montaigne, change was not an interruption of life, it was life. He wrote that constancy is a quality of mechanical things, not of living beings. Everything that breathes is in motion. The mind changes, the heart shifts, the body transforms, the world evolves. And to resist this motion is to resist the very force that sustains us. He noticed that our greatest fears almost always trace back to one thing, the fear that something will change, the fear of losing what we love, of being abandoned, of failing, of aging, of dying. All of them are expressions of the same anxiety, that life will move without our permission. And yet, whether we agree or not, life moves. Montaigne's genius was to make peace with this. He saw that every attempt to fix the world in place is an act of violence against reality. We call it stability, but it's really just denial. We don't want to face the truth that everything is already slipping through our fingers. But he found a strange kind of joy in that slipping. He accepted his contradictions, his shifting moods, his changing opinions, and instead of seeing inconsistency as failure, he saw it as honesty. Because only the rigid refuse to grow, only the dead never change their minds. He wrote, "If I find myself different from yesterday, so much the better. I have learned something." That sentence is quiet, but it contains an entire philosophy. To live well is to evolve without shame. What makes change painful is not change itself, it's our clinging. We treat life like a possession, when it was always meant to be a relationship. The seasons turn, and we call it beautiful. But when our lives do the same, we call it loss. Montaigne invites us to reverse that. He invites us to see each transformation, not as a failure, but as renewal. To let go is not to lose, it's to return things to their natural rhythm. When we stop demanding permanence, something miraculous happens. We begin to notice life again, the small details, the fleeting joys, the subtle grace of moments that will never repeat. Every breath becomes more precious when we remember it cannot be held. To embrace change is to trust the movement of existence. It's to know that even endings carry new beginnings inside them, that every fall creates the ground for something new to rise. It takes courage to live this way, the courage to let go of yesterday's certainty and step into today's mystery. But this courage doesn't harden you, it softens you. It teaches you to bend without breaking, to adapt without losing yourself. Montaigne's lesson is simple but transformative. To live well, you must become like water. You take the shape of what comes. You move, you flow, you find your way around obstacles, and somehow, you always arrive. Change is not chaos, it's choreography, and life is the dancer. Your task is not to control the rhythm, but to learn how to move with it. When you stop resisting, change becomes less like a threat and more like a teacher, reminding you that the only true stability is the grace of being able to change. At first, uncertainty feels like chaos. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff with no ground beneath your feet, like your mind is searching for something solid to hold on to and finding only air. But what if that air was never emptiness? What if it was freedom? Montaigne believed that most people live as prisoners of their own expectations. We build our cages from plans, identities, and opinions, and then wonder why we can't breathe. We think freedom means control. We think it's the ability to shape life according to our will, but that kind of freedom always ends in exhaustion, because reality will not obey. True freedom, he wrote, begins where control ends. It begins when we stop forcing life to match our fantasies and allow it to unfold in its own mysterious rhythm. When Montaigne said, "I do not teach, I tell," he was declaring his independence from certainty. He refused to preach because he knew that truth cannot be owned. It can only be experienced. He wasn't interested in convincing you of anything. He was interested in helping you see what it feels like to be alive in a world that cannot be pinned down. Freedom for him was not external, it was internal. It was the freedom to change his mind, to contradict himself, to evolve without apology. It was the freedom to be confused and still be whole. He saw how society traps people in definitions. You are this, you must believe that, you must never change. But Montaigne knew that life itself violates these rules every second. Everything changes, why shouldn't you? He wrote, "The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself." That is the essence of his freedom, belonging to yourself, not to your roles, your past, or other people's expectations. To belong to yourself is to stop performing, to stop trying to meet every imagined standard of what you should be. It is to be honest about your confusion, to make peace with your contradictions, and to live without constantly needing to explain or justify them. That honesty is terrifying at first, because it strips away the false comfort of knowing who you are. But it also opens the door to something deeper, authenticity. You begin to live as you are, not as you should be. And when you live that way, anxiety starts to fade, because anxiety feeds on the gap between your reality and your expectations. The smaller that gap becomes, the quieter the mind grows. We often mistake surrender for defeat. We imagine it as giving up, as weakness, as loss. But Montaigne saw it differently. For him, surrender was not about falling to the ground. It was about finally touching it. He wrote at a time when the world was tearing itself apart with certainty. Kings and priests fighting over truths no one could prove. And yet, in the middle of that chaos, he did something radical. He let go. He surrendered his need to win arguments, to be right, to know for sure. And in doing so, he found what almost everyone else was searching for: peace. To surrender, he realized, is not to stop thinking. It's to stop clinging. It's to meet reality on its own terms. It's to whisper, "Let it be as it is," and feel, even for a second, that the fight is over. Think of how much of your daily suffering comes from resistance. You want the weather to change, the people around you to behave differently, yourself to feel something other than what you feel. You argue silently with the present moment, as if it were a mistake to be corrected. But life is not a draft to be edited. It is the final copy, unfolding in real time. Montaigne believed that wisdom begins when we stop treating the present as an error, when we stop saying, "This shouldn't be happening," and begin asking, "What can I learn from this happening?" He didn't preach passive acceptance. He wasn't suggesting we surrender our actions or choices. He was pointing to something more subtle, a surrender of inner resistance. Because the mind that resists everything cannot learn from anything, and the person who refuses to bend ends up breaking. Surrender is not the absence of action. It's the absence of unnecessary struggle. It's the difference between swimming with the current and thrashing against it. When you surrender, life doesn't suddenly become easy, but it becomes clear. You begin to see where your true power lies. not in controlling outcomes, but in choosing your response. There is a kind of silence that only arrives once you stop demanding answers. It's not the silence of ignorance, but the quiet that comes when the mind finally lays down its weapons and admits that it doesn't need to understand everything to be at peace. Montaigne lived most of his life inside that silence. He discovered that the deepest calm is not found in clarity, but in acceptance, the ability to say, "I don't know," and that's okay. He understood that the need to know is often just another disguise for fear. We chase explanations because we're terrified of facing mystery. We think that if we can name a thing, we can control it. But knowledge, for all its power, never stops life from being unpredictable. So he stopped chasing. He let go of the fantasy that every question had to lead to an answer, and instead began to see value in the questions themselves. They were alive, open, fertile. They kept him curious, and curiosity, he realized, was a far better companion than certainty. He wrote, "The plague of man is the opinion of knowing, because once you believe you already know, you stop listening, you stop seeing, you stop learning. But when you allow yourself to not know, you become available to life again. You begin to experience things directly, without forcing them into categories or conclusions. The world regains its depth, its freshness, its mystery. This is the peace of not knowing, a peace that doesn't depend on control, but on openness. It's the same peace you feel when you stand under a vast night sky and realize that you don't need to explain the stars to admire them. You don't need to understand the ocean to be moved by its rhythm. You don't need to define love to feel it. Modern life has forgotten this kind of peace. We are flooded with information but starved of meaning. We measure, analyze, optimize, but in the process we forget how to simply be. Montaigne reminds us that it's okay to rest inside the unknown, to stop solving yourself like a problem and start witnessing yourself like a mystery. Because peace isn't found when every piece fits. It's found when you stop needing the puzzle to be complete. When you say, "I don't know," you are not closing a door, you are opening one. You are stepping into the vastness of life and discovering that uncertainty is not chaos, it's space. The space where growth, insight, and transformation occur. To not know is to remain teachable. To not know is to remain alive. Montaigne's serenity was not born from ignorance, but from intimacy with his own limits. He trusted that life did not need his constant supervision to unfold as it should. He understood that control had never been a requirement for meaning. And that's the paradox. The more you let go of knowing, the clearer everything becomes. Because when the mind stops demanding explanations, the heart begins to understand on its own, not through logic, but through presence. In that presence, even uncertainty feels sacred, even change feels safe. And suddenly, life with all its mystery and motion feels like home. This is the peace Montaigne found in not knowing, not a peace that removes questions, but one that learns to live among them with grace. When all the noise fades, when the theories fall apart, when certainty dissolves, what remains? Something quiet, something simple, something that was always there, waiting beneath the noise, the peace of just being. Montaigne's entire philosophy circles back to this, not as an achievement, but as a return. He never promised enlightenment, only honesty. He never offered a system, only sincerity. And yet, by doing so, he revealed one of life's deepest truths. That peace is not found at the end of answers. It begins the moment you stop needing them. He learned to live with fewer demands. He no longer asked life to be fair, predictable, or consistent. He no longer measured his worth by stability or success. Instead, he practiced a radical kind of acceptance, the courage to see life as it is, not as he wished it to be. He discovered that the greatest simplicity is not in changing the world, but in changing the way you meet it. To meet life simply is to wake each day without expectation, to act without needing to control the result, to love without demanding permanence, to fail without losing dignity. It's to understand that everything is temporary, and yet somehow, that makes everything more beautiful. We are so used to chasing peace, in work, in relationships, in meaning, that we forget peace was never lost. It was only hidden beneath our resistance to uncertainty. When you stop fighting, it returns. When you stop running, it finds you. Montaigne's gift to us is not a method, but a mirror. He shows us what it looks like to be fully human, fragile, inconsistent, curious, alive. He shows us that wisdom is not perfection, but participation. To live wisely is to engage with life's movement, not to master it. So perhaps, after all this reflection, the question isn't, how do I control life? but how can I let it move through me? Maybe the practice begins in small, humble ways, by pausing before you react, by breathing before you worry, by saying, "I don't know," and meaning it, not with shame, but with calm. Because that moment of humility, that soft surrender, is the doorway to something larger than knowledge. It's the space where understanding grows naturally, like light filtering through the trees. Montaigne reminds us that life is not a riddle to solve, but a poem to live. And poems are not meant to be analyzed to death, they are meant to be felt. The beauty of life lies not in its clarity, but in its rhythm, not in its certainty, but in its wonder. So the next time you find yourself anxious for control, remember this: you do not need to have everything figured out. You only need to be here, awake, curious, present. Let life surprise you. Let it move you. Let it confuse you. Because that confusion is not failure, it's the sound of growth. And one day, without even noticing, you'll find yourself walking through the same chaos and realizing that it no longer scares you, that the storm you feared has become the wind that carries you forward. That is the peace Montaigne discovered. That is the peace that's waiting for you. If this reflection spoke to you, if some part of you feels ready to loosen your grip and live a little lighter, don't let the feeling fade when the video ends. Pause, breathe. Ask yourself, where in my life am I still resisting the flow? And if this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, because here we explore not just ideas, but the art of living with presence, humility, and depth. Join this journey of reflection, and let's keep discovering together what it really means to live freely in a world that never stops changing.